Yeah.
Because Harden basically requested a trade. Everyone shit on him, said, he's not loyal, he's doing this and that. But yeah, a team can come out and publicly say, we're not going to play this guy because we're looking to trade him, and no one bats an eye.
This could be an interesting topic for On the Record.
Welcome to episode 32 of On the Record with Big Nick. As you can see, I have got a few guests here. We have a very big topic to talk about today. I got my brother here, I got Dante, and I got Jonny. In today's topic, we're going to talk about the players versus the owners, about who has more control, so on and so forth. And the other big topic we're going to talk about today is fans. The most underrated part of all sports. Do the teams even care about the fans? More importantly, do the owners even care about the fans?
The fans care about the fans, though.
Yes, we do.
Someone's got it.
Fans are with fans. It's like blue-collar people to blue-collar people. We watch out for each other. Without further ado, let's get this show on the road.
So, the main thing that we were talking about in the pit, what stemmed from all this was the whole, what's his name?
Draymond. So Andre Drummond being benched for the next possible month until they have a trade or partner available for the Cavs. Draymond Green, they were playing, the Warriors were playing the Cavs the other night. Draymond Green, in his post-game interview, comes out and says, I want to address an issue. Andre Drummond came out in street clothes, and it's bullshit that he's not going to be able to play for the next month. And he said, teams basically are held to this different standard than players are. If a team were to hold a player out for the next month, no one bats an eye. But when a player sits out games, everyone goes crazy about it. If a team were to say, we're interested in this player or we're shopping around these players, no one cares. But if a player, if Draymond Green talks to James Harden about something, he gets fined. So where's the double standard lie with these things? Why is it that the players are held to a different standard than the teams are? And that's kind of where this argument kind of lies.
What's your take?
I don't disagree with Draymond. I think, why is it that when a team benches a player for a month, there are no negative repercussions for it? The team is the one paying the bills, yes, and the team is the one who is, the one that makes the decisions, but a player ultimately doesn't get to have any say in this. They are voiceless in these situations. They're not the ones who make the decision. If they get traded, they're up to the will of the owner, where they'll go.
That's part of the game, though, isn't it?
It is part of the game, but
it's part of the business too.
But does it have to be that way?
Well, tell me what's the answer. So if you agree with Draymond, then what would the next step look like?
Making it more not holding players to the same. It's more or less just holding the teams to the same standard as the players. Holding the teams to say, if the team were to do this, the media should say this is bad. Looks bad for the team. Instead of saying, well, this is a smart, savvy move because it won't get hurt.
I agree, but that's so hard because if you're going to apply that, you could basically apply it. Couldn't you apply it to other big businesses and how they take care of their employees? You gave the example about Amazon.
Yes.
So I don't think I would disagree with your take, but what I would say is that the way that it works, especially with people that are running such large businesses, that it is such a black and white business. It's not like a 10-person company to where there's emotions that can go back and forth. It's black and white about numbers and business. And is that right? I don't know. It's out of my league what it's like working with those numbers and stuff like that. And I guess if I put myself in the shoes of the athlete, does it suck? Yeah. However, isn't he still getting paid?
Yeah, he's still getting paid. But, if Drummond comes out and voices his disapproval of this situation, he's chastised. He's made to look like a villain.
And he can get fined.
for disagreeing.
He's probably going to get fined for what he said.
Yeah.
What did he say?
What Draymond said.
Draymond's
going to get
fined.
fined.
I thought you said the other guy.
No.
If Drummond were to say, I don't like the way they're treating me right now, I don't like being benched, he gets fined. The team doesn't see any punishment from that. So no matter what happens, if Drummond says, I don't want to play for this team anymore, let's look at the James Harden situation. James Harden didn't want to play for the Rockets anymore. He sits out. He gets fined every day he misses practice. Mm-hmm. If the team were to hold Harden out of those same practices, there would be no repercussions from the team's perspective. If they were to do the same thing that James Harden, pretty much, if you're looking for, this is what Draymond did. He compared James Harden's situation to Drummond's situation, and they're very similar. if they look at, I don't want to play until I'm traded. The team doesn't want me to play until I'm traded. Those are the two situations. One, the player sees all the repercussions. James Harden, he got fined for it. Eventually, he did get traded, but he was chastised in the media. People held him accountable for his actions. But
do you think the players and the owner should be on even playing fields? I guess that's what I would say, because that's basically that's how it all boils down to, right? You're basically saying, so the reason that there's a difference is because basically the owners have more power than the players, which is why it's a one-way street right now.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Do you think that's not the case? If so, how do you see that playing out?
Where does the value of the league come into? The value comes from the players. The NBA was not a multi-billion national sport before Michael Jordan. It became that way because of one player specifically, Michael Jordan. LeBron James helped elevate that. Players like Yao Ming. The players itself are the ones who are developing the league. And Adam Silver can go build a league in China, build a league in Africa, and do that to develop the game that way. But at the end of the day, the people who are the worldwide fans who are going to buy the jerseys, going to do all that stuff, are doing it because of the players, not because of Dan Gilbert, not because of...
No, I think that's right, but what's their role then? These owners that have all this money and are paying these players all this money and buying these franchises for all this kind of money, which obviously then bolsters the value of the league, right? If these teams are selling for such 10x, 20x, whatever it was, right, which has gone up astronomically, then obviously the league becomes more valuable because now you just paid for something that is worth way more than it was before. Yeah. So what is their value then? Well,
the owners. Yeah. The value of the owners is the end of the be-all. It's to pay the bills. I mean, that's what you. I mean, the reason why you become an owner is that's a whole other topic we'll talk about when we get to the fan stuff. But the reason you become an owner is so you can own a team and so you can to make the team more profitable. And you do that any way you want. And this is something I'll bring up later in terms of fandom. That can include cutting costs, trimming fat. That can include, taking off fan services that people enjoy. That can also include not spending money on your team. That can include, trying to develop your team and develop talent. And you can't develop talent, you can't develop a team, inherently without getting more talent and getting these players. I think it should be more of a working relationship. It should be more equal footing, where if a player doesn't want to play for a team, they can voice it. It only really works that way in basketball, because one player is so valuable to a team that it wouldn't work in baseball, it wouldn't work in football. And we're seeing it in football with Deshaun Watson. He's displeased. He's not going to get traded because he's one player in the offense of 12. Versus James Harden's one player in an offense of 5.
Mm-hmm. In the NBA, if a superstar voices his disapproval or he's upset and he wants to trade, at the end of the day, 99% of the time, the guy gets his wish. He gets a trade. I think my take on this, because you're on a roll right now and you guys are going back and forth and I love this. My biggest thing, my takeaway is, and Draymond said this, I just think the NBA and the league needs to protect its players more in this case. Like, equal footing is a good way of putting it, but the way these players are getting perceived by the media and by everyone outside of the NBA is just it's ridiculous. Like James Harden, the way he was literally just destroyed for weeks because he just didn't want to be there. And I just think situations like that can't happen. There needs to be a line that they just need to agree to it and make sure that stuff like that just really doesn't happen. Because I think players get a little too much. They just get shit on too much, really.
So my one point that I would make is, again, I understand what everyone's saying here, but if you're under contract, right? So James Harden was under contract with the Rockets. Yes. If you want to leave, fine. But the way that I look at it is you're still a member of the Rockets. Mm-hmm. You still need to do the right things while you're there and be professional about it. You might not like being there. Yeah. That's fine. You might want to voice it, fine. But if you're in a Rocket uniform, you've got to give it everything you have until they tell you. Because, again, it's kind of to AJ's point, not by any means, I want to make this loud and clear, that they own the guys. That's not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is that they pay you, so I pay you to play on my team. I gave you a contract. You need to play until we can either A, work something out with you. You don't want to be here? Because I would assume that if I was an owner, if I got a player that doesn't want to play for me, fuck you, you're getting out of town. I don't care how good you are. Mm-hmm. If you don't want to be here, you're not going to ruin the culture that we have here. But at the same time, going to strip clubs, It's a bad image, and you're 100% right. The media blows it up, but you don't help yourself when you go to strip clubs. You get fucking fat. You do this. You do that. Like it's just.
I agree. Like you have to handle it professionally. And
you gotta handle it professionally.
James Harden did not handle everything they did professionally.
No,
like he did not.
And going back to the Cavs, it's a very similar situation where they each hold out themselves, and I think neither is good because ultimately you're. And now this can segue into our next conversation. The fans want to see the players play. The fans don't I want to see the best players play every night.
Before we go into the fans, go ahead.
There are instances with where players would sit out. Like teams would sit out players like the day of. Like these people would literally buy tickets. Like the Lakers, they go to see LeBron James, and the day of they say, "Oh, we're just going to rest him."
The Spurs. I mean, if that's the prime example.
You know what I mean? It's just like that's unfair to fans.
So before we completely segue into fans, I think my last 2 cents on the topic is. I don't mind Draymond saying whatever he wants to say. I generally don't really care everybody can say what they want, right? Freedom of speech. Say what you want. If you're telling me that Draymond's interested in change, I don't necessarily believe the best way to go about it is just to the media. I think the best first step would have been to actually sit down with his own internal management, his own internal ownership, and actually just ask the guy right to his face. Like, hey, this is what's going on. Here's an example of a player that it's going on with. I don't believe in this. Can you tell me, here's my thoughts on it. Can you tell me what your thoughts on it? Number one, in my opinion, as somebody who's looking for change, just go right to the person. Talk to them. Now, if it doesn't get anywhere, or if he just wants it to be more of like a public issue, and just no problem, like that's what the media is good for. I think that's fine. Yeah. But if there's no step in there of actually going to his own ownership and saying, I'd really like to see this changed at some point in the league. Here's my take on it. Can you fill me in on what your take is? Because I just don't think this is fair. And going back and forth to try to make it better, then I don't really see it as him trying to you can be an advocate for change and say it, but you need to go to the source and actually figure out what's going on, because then you can actually see, well, is this person sellable or not? Will we make progress on this or not? And then if the answer is no, then you can go down the whole rabbit hole of, well, yeah, you know what, the players are the players. They do have more leverage. Maybe in the future, there could be a league where players have ownership on these teams. Why not? There's other people that have billions of dollars in the world. All you need to do is have a billionaire partner with a player. It could work, potentially. So, and then that's just overall business in general. Like, things change. Amazon kicked Barnes & Noble's ass, and now Amazon's taking over, the world. Kind of. But do you get what I'm saying? Like, that, I think from a full vantage point of how it all unfolds, I think if he wants to voice it, to bring awareness to it, I think is awesome. But I don't think he's actually... I don't think you can actually say he's trying to change something unless he's also going to the ownership, and because that's essentially where you're going to make the change, right? I mean, you need to have a conversation. If I'm an owner and he's not coming and talking to me, why would I change? Why would I change it? Like we got to. If change is going to happen, you have to go to the person that you want the change to happen.
Just going right to the media isn't really going to do too much.
But what going to the media does is it makes it a public issue. If he were to do this behind closed doors and just say, "Hey, let's change this," the owners could say no, and then nothing happens out of it. By making this a public issue,
I don't disagree. I just think that needs to be a step in the equation if he's actually trying to make change. I don't. In general, one of the things that I've seen this year overall is I get the media is out there. It's a good opportunity for awareness. If you have a problem with someone, if you have change that you'd like to see make, and you're able to go to the person, I think it's much better to go to the person and to actually try to solve something as opposed to just making it a bigger issue, because in my opinion, that bigger issue then gets taken out of context and then you just have an even bigger issue.
Look, he's not talking about the specific, he's using the specific example of Andre Drummond to talk about a greater issue. And so going to one specific owner and saying, hey, Dan Gilbert, I don't know, whatever, I don't like what you're doing with Andre Drummond, that's just one piece in the giant puzzle. That he's talking about reception of players versus reception of ownership versus reception of teams. This is a one.
Yeah, but it's also like a respect thing. Like, somebody might get pissed off if you decide to go to the media before going to them. Like maybe if you went to the
It's more professional.
Yeah, but this is not.
I think so.
But this is not a one-to-one change. This is a greater change that he wants to see within how the league is covered as a whole, and it's mostly a lot of it is with the media. His issue is not necessarily his issue is with ownership per se, but his issue as a whole is with the league and the media.
Making sure the league protects the
and
players.
so make sure the league protects the players. So he's sending out a public plea to the league and the media, saying, "Let's protect our players more than you're protecting the ownership," and that's kind of what he's doing here, versus directly having an issue with.
But that won't ever happen because the owners, like, here's the thing. I get what you're saying, but like, players come and go.
Yeah.
Right? Some guys might play 10 years, some guys might play 20 years. Celtics are always going to be there. Lakers are always going to be here. They're, whatever. And I'm not saying that, forget about a guy like LeBron James or Draymond. That's not what I'm saying. But for every guy who retires, like when MJ retired, LeBron came up.
Of course.
When LeBron retires, somebody else is going to come up. Like, it's always going to be this cycle, always back and forth. And you could have owners that own teams for 30, 40, 50 years, and then obviously if they decide to sell to somebody, then that person's going to do whatever they want with it.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with you, Johnny, but I do disagree with not thinking that one-to-one conversations scale, because they do scale.
But it's not that they don't scale. It's that that's not what he was trying to achieve. He wasn't trying to achieve the one-to-one change where this specific situation needs to change with this one owner. It's ownership in general. It's the league in general. It's more of a broad appeal than just a one-to-one.
Okay.
If he wanted to make the change with a one-to-one, it would have been. I agree. It would have been better for him to go one-on-one with the ownership. If he had a specific problem,
I mean, the change in general has to come from the owners, right?
yes, but it has to come from the league, and it's a multi-tiered thing. Change doesn't beget from one thing. It's this group has to change, this group has to change, and this group has to change. And if he only tackles it's about looking at the head of the fish versus the whole body, and he wants to tackle the whole thing. You could do the very little minimum, which is doing the one-to-one, and that could change this one specific situation for the future. But he wants to make the systemic change of, this is an issue that needs to change in the league for the future. Drummond gets benched for the next month, and if he voices his displeasure, it hurts his career. But in the inverse, it doesn't, and that's what he's saying. He's saying it's ridiculous that this league the owners aren't held to the same standard as the players are. And so it's not necessarily a one-to-one issue. It's a greater good issue.
As bad as it sounds of him being benched for a month, which again is bullshit. If you're healthy, you should go play. Not arguing that. But if they tell you what they want to do, again, I'm not saying it's right here, and I'm not saying I agree with it. But if I'm the owner and I tell my coach, don't play him, we're trading him, I mean, the guy, if he's paying you to play or not play, like that's, again, I'm not saying it's right. But if you want to tell a guy, look, we're getting rid of you soon, we're not going to play you because we don't want you to get hurt. I mean, it is their team. Like,
sure.
It might not be right. I'm not saying it is, but it's their team.
I think the best model to follow, I mean, look what's happening with Blake Griffin. Him and the organization mutually agreed for him to sit out games until they figure out what he's going to do. Drummond, I don't know what's going through his head. Maybe he wants to play. Cleveland, they don't want him to play. James Harden, he didn't want to play. The organization wanted him to play.
I mean, Drummond just signed that one-year deal with the Cavs before the season.
Yeah, so I mean, with Blake Griffin, they mutually agreed. Like, they agreed that I'm not going to play. They don't want him to play. I don't want to play. I think that's the type of example that you got to follow, and that these teams and players need to follow. That's just the perfect situation right there.
If they came to Drummond and said, "Listen, we want to trade you. We don't want you to get hurt. A, so that you can get to a good team because we want you, so you go win a championship. B, so that we can get better package back. Would you mind sitting out the next month?" He says, "Sure." Like Blake Griffin situation, that's fine. But it's the fact that these leagues, that the team can just unilaterally say, "You're not playing for the next month," and Drummond has to be okay with it. That's what Draymond is saying. If James Harden,
I totally get it.
Yeah.
I totally get it. Just so you know, the first example of that is Griffin talked to management, talked to ownership.
well, management talked to Griffin. Management approached Griffin with the issue.
Okay.
So that's where it came down, because management made the decision, we don't want Blake Griffin playing. They approached Blake Griffin. Blake Griffin was okay with it. That's an agreed upon situation. That's a very healthy, normal relationship. Unilateral decision from the top, Cleveland saying, "You're not playing, deal with it." That's the issue.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the issue is the perception of that versus what James Harden is doing, is what Draymond is bringing to the forefront. That's the issue in hand. It's not.
I get it.
Yeah.
So you think the owners have too much control, or you think they should be held accountable to not being able to tell the person that they're playing what they're doing?
I think there's more accountability with ownership. Holding ownership, and now I think now we can segue to the fans. Is how ownership doesn't hold any. It's not held accountable, and the people and ownership and the people who usually are forced to reckon with those decisions are the fans. With benching Andre Drummond, and baseball teams decide not to spend money because
Business.
it's a business for them. But the team like the Nationals cutting all pregame, postgame shows from their broadcasts because it saves them money. Ultimately, these cost-cutting measures and these business decisions only hurt one person more or less, and it's the fans. The Red Sox are going to suck now for a while because ownership decided we don't want to spend, we don't want to go over the luxury tax anymore. There's the change in ownership where you can make money without having fans, and it works. You can skirt by with 2,000, 20,000 attendance on average in baseball because you have that big TV deal. So because it's no longer dependent, winning is no longer dependent on money. Making money is no longer dependent on winning. Teams are less incentivized to win, and that comes back and hurts the fans.
All in all, those short-term decisions that teams are making to be more profitable, to be more business-driven, can hurt though in the long term.
It will hurt in the long term.
Yep, and which will be interesting to see how it plays out. Because that's where you lose leverage. Those TV deals that used to bring in as much money, when you don't have the viewership, they won't be bringing in as much money.
Exactly. And also, on top of that, the whole ownership thing, especially in baseball, with these TV deals, was we want to profit as much as we can, and then we're going to sell at top value so someone else is stuck with the bag. Someone else passing the bag off to someone else. And so that's where the issue lies, is now with the pandemic the last year, is that the bag is starting to blow up in their own faces. And so they're starting to cut costs like crazy. And this is one of the reasons why I think there's going to be a strike next year in baseball specifically. But going back to, who cares for the fans, the players certainly don't either. Players are just as responsible and just culpable in these situations as the owners are.
Yeah. So it probably sounds like both the owners need to be more accountable and the players need to be more accountable overall to give the fans a better experience as well.
When James Harden wants out of Houston, he sits out for a week and he kind of, dogs it for a bit. If you're a Houston fan, how do you feel about that? These the players who are the only reason, the power to the player, power to the labor, whatever. But as a fan, I'm spending my hard-earned money to go watch the Rockets play, to get a cable deal so I can watch the Rockets, whatever. If I watch the game and James Harden's not playing, or as you were saying before with, the Spurs, the Lakers, LeBron James doesn't play in the game I spend, $150 to go buy a ticket for, I'm screwed out of my money. I'm losing profits here. I'm not getting the experience I wanted to see. And in baseball, when players are getting so much more money now and the league is making so much more money, that all is coming from the fans. The fans are spending more money to get a worse product. Tickets are more expensive now than they've ever been. TV deals are more expensive now than they've ever been.
But don't you think the fans feed into the problem, though?
Yeah,
it's an abusive.
They 100% feed into the problem.
It's an abusive relationship. It really is an abusive relationship.
Especially with cable stuff, you buy a cable package, you're still gonna pay for it, even if James Harden isn't playing. They're still gonna,
And they're taking advantage. Ownership and players are taking advantage of the fact that you're right. The fans are capable of it because, I love my teams. I will watch my teams play. I will spend money on merch. I will do this, this, and this. And it's feeding into the problem because they know that fans are going to do this regardless.
They're gonna, because fans have loyalty to their teams. If they suck, if they're great, if they're a Patriots dynasty or they haven't been to the playoffs in 20 years, it doesn't matter. Us New England fans, we were witnessed dynasty for 20 years. We had the greatest quarterback ever. And then in 2020, Tom left. We had Cam Newton. Total change of events. But if people were still going to those games, that stadium still would have sold out because people want to watch football. They want to watch their sports. Fenway Park will have people in the stands. It doesn't matter. They've won 68 games one season. They still had a sold-out house.
No reason to have people in there. No one.
Right, but the thing is that people keep going. So the point is that Johnny's point is valid. I'm not saying it's not. but we're also feeding into the problem. Like when I always joke around saying I'm not going to go to the game. Me personally, I would. The only way I would go is if I got a ticket for free.
Yeah.
Because to me, it's like Johnny said. Why am I going to spend money for a product that sucks?
Yep.
Are you going to go to the market and buy rotten vegetables? No. You're going to go and buy good vegetables. It's just you're feeding into the problem so they can sit there and they can hear it. But then if you pay for the subscription, he pays for one, I pay one for. They don't care. You're bitching, so what? They're still getting your money. They don't care how you feel.
Well,
it's about money.
Right now, currently, I mean, the Celtics, listen, you can say what you want about the Celtics. They've been sucking recently, but I still watch the games because I'm a Celtics fan.
I mean,
you know
exactly.
what I mean? That's just how it is.
The teams know that people build their identities off of fandom. I mean, whether it's sports fan, and not just sports, but just generally, fandoms are so powerful. It's such a powerful force that, be it movies, be it books, be it television, be it sports, people will build their identities off of it. And it's very hard for people to break those identities. You are what your hobbies are. And I grew up watching baseball. So I have this ingrained, feeling inside me that I need to, come April, I need to watch baseball no matter what. Mm-hmm. And the leagues are banking on that 100% and saying, you will keep doing that no matter what. We'll put out shittier and shittier products, and there'll still be a core group of fans or people who we can take money from. Whether it's fans or whether with the TV deals, that's a whole other complicated issue where people who buy TV cable packages aren't necessarily sports fans, they're just buying cable packages, so they make money off of that. But they know they have this rock solid source of income that they can do whatever the fuck they want, and that source will still be there. And as you said before, it's short-term gain versus long-term, and they're endangering the long-term health of the sport for these short-term profits, where they cut payroll, where they cut all these things, they cut all these fan services, so they can make that little bit more now versus the long-term.
I mean, it's good business, but it's bad business. I mean, it's good short-term, but then it blows up in your face at some point, and at that point, it's not good business. So.
And in 20 years, when these teams are sold to the next person, and the league is collapsing, who's going to be the one that hurts the most? It's the fans.
Yeah.
Because they see these things that they grew up doing, grew up watching, just becoming a farce of what they used to be.
So as you can see, it was a pretty intense conversation here. We have some passionate fans in the building. We have some passionate business-savvy people in the building. But all in all, this is a great episode. I want to thank Jonny, Dante, and my brother AJ for joining me on the Record. This is a great topic. Put in your comments. Tell us what you think of what's going on right now. And, at the end of the day, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but, I mean, I love my sports, so I'm going to keep watching. I mean, it is what it is. So, we hope you enjoyed the episode. Like and subscribe. Put your notifications on so that you can get the videos as soon as they come out. And that's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
Bam.